When I say everything changed because of one hypnosis command, people laugh. They think I'm exaggerating, or making up some dramatic twist to get attention. But if someone had told me years ago that a simple moment of weakness would turn my entire identity upside down, I would have laughed too. I was the type of guy who believed nothing could influence me, that my mind was unshakable, that I was in full control. And maybe that stubborn confidence was exactly what made me fall so hard. Because the truth is, I didn't realize how fragile a person can be until the day I became their maid without even understanding how it happened. It started with a dare. A stupid casual challenge between friends that should have ended with embarrassment and laughter, not a full identity shift. There were 4 of them, my closest friends since school. Daniel, always way too confident, Rohan, the prank mastermind, Seema, who acted innocent but wasn't, and Aisha, the only girl in the group but easily the smartest one. We were hanging out at their apartment during a boring weekend, the kind where everyone is restless but no one actually wants to go anywhere. That's when Daniel brought out the small black device. It looked cheap, like something you'd buy online as a joke. He claimed it was a hypnosis tool he ordered because he saw a video of someone controlling their friend like a puppet. I rolled my eyes and told him it was fake. Seema laughed and said only weak-minded people fall for that stuff. I shrugged, not knowing how heavy that moment would sit on my chest later. Aisha gave me this slow, thoughtful smile. She wasn't the type to joke around without a purpose. She suggested we test it on someone confident enough to resist it. My name came out of her mouth before anyone else's. I remember teasing her, calling her a mastermind villain, but she didn't deny it. Maybe she already had something in mind. Maybe they all did. I agreed because I thought it would be fun to prove them wrong. Hypnosis wasn't real, right? At least, that's what I kept telling myself. They dimmed the lights slightly, not in a creepy way, but just enough to make the room feel heavier. Daniel held the device a few inches from my face, and I remember the tiny rhythmic clicks echoing in the silence. It wasn't the sound that got me, it was the way Aisha started talking softly, calmly, almost like she had rehearsed this. She told me to relax my shoulders, to breathe slowly, to let my mind drift for just a moment. And maybe I was tired that day. Maybe my guard was down. Maybe I wanted to impress them. Whatever it was, something inside me loosened, and for the first time, my heartbeat felt like it wasn't mine to control. Her voice kept going, a steady stream of instructions all wrapped in reassurance, and before I knew it, the room didn't feel solid anymore. I remember wondering why my arms felt heavy. Why my thoughts felt slow. Why everything she said sounded like something I already agreed with before she even finished speaking. Then came the command. The one that would twist the next years of my life into a shape I never saw coming. She said whenever anyone in the room used the word service, my mind would automatically shift into a mode where I wanted to help them, support them, be useful to them. It sounded harmless. Just a stupid suggestion. A tiny joke. And I laughed in my head, thinking this won't work. But my voice didn't come out. I blinked and the moment snapped, and I acted like nothing happened. They high-fived, thinking it failed. I teased them for even trying. Everything went back to normal, and for the next few minutes, I truly believed I was completely unaffected. Until Rohan laughed and said he was thirsty. Then he added the word itself, almost casually. Service. And something inside me tightened, like a string being pulled. Before I realized it, I was already getting up, walking toward the kitchen, reaching for a glass. They stared at me, confused. I tried to joke it off, saying I was just being polite, but another command slipped from Daniel's lips. Not even a command. A teasing remark. You're actually kind of good at this, you know. Maybe you should be our maid for the evening. The sudden shift in the room hit me like a chill. My stomach dropped for a second, but my legs didn't listen to that fear. My mind didn't either. I felt this strange urge to obey, as if arguing or refusing wasn't even an option. My thoughts kept telling me it was fine, that helping my friends wasn't a big deal, that it was all harmless. But inside, the real me was banging against a door I didn't know existed. That evening wasn't embarrassing. It was terrifying. Not because they mistreated me, but because the entire time, I couldn't tell which actions were mine and which were planted. Every time they said that word, I felt this warmth in my chest pushing me to serve, to clean up, to bring food, to fetch their things. They laughed at first, thinking I was doing it on purpose. But once they realized I wasn't even aware of what I was doing until after I'd already done it, the laughter faded. Saima's face lost its smile. Rohan stopped joking. Even Daniel's confidence cracked. Only Aisha watched carefully, almost too carefully, like she was studying a puzzle she had solved correctly. I didn't tell them how scared I was. Not at first. I acted cool, played it off like a silly trick. But days passed, and the commands grew stronger, not because they wanted them to, but because I started reacting even when they said the word accidentally. My mind clicked every time. At school. At cafes. At their apartment. And worst of all, at home. My younger sister used the word while asking for help, and without thinking, I folded her laundry. She looked at me weird but didn't ask questions. My parents noticed I was acting different, more compliant, too helpful, too eager. They found it sweet. I found it horrifying. I kept telling myself I could fight it. That hypnosis wasn't real. That I was just imagining it. But the commands didn't fade. They evolved. My reactions became sharper, cleaner, almost rehearsed. And Aisha noticed every single shift. One day she pulled me aside and asked me how much control I actually felt I had. The truth slipped out before I could stop it. I told her I didn't feel like myself anymore. She listened, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't read. Worry, maybe. Curiosity. Or something else. Everything escalated the day they invited me to their place again. They said they wanted to help undo whatever was happening. I was relieved at first, until I walked into the apartment and saw what they had prepared. Cleaning supplies. Organized clothes. A whole setup that didn't look accidental. They said it would help them test the command and weaken it. But deep down, I think they already suspected something I was too afraid to admit. The suggestion hadn't just changed my behavior. It had touched something deeper, something I didn't want to acknowledge. Every time I cleaned or helped, I felt a strange mix of fear and comfort. Like a part of me found purpose in it. That terrified me even more. Aisha suggested one final test. She said they wouldn't joke, they wouldn't push, they wouldn't pressure. They would just say the trigger word once, in a calm setting, and observe. If nothing happened, I'd be free. If something did, then we'd know how serious it truly was. I agreed because I was desperate. I wanted my mind back. I wanted my identity back. I wanted the old me, the one who never hesitated to say no. Daniel sat on the couch, cleared his throat, and spoke the word softly. And I didn't just respond. I transformed. I don't know how else to describe it. Something inside me melted away. My posture shifted. My voice softened. My hands moved automatically to tidy things without direction. And they all froze, because this time, it wasn't funny. It wasn't light-hearted. It was real. Too real. I saw myself in the mirror across the room, and for a split second, I didn't recognize myself. My expression wasn't blank, but it wasn't mine either. It was controlled, gentle, focused. Like someone performing a role perfectly. And when I looked at them, afraid, searching for help, Aisha whispered something I'll never forget. She said the command didn't just make me obedient. It unlocked a version of me that had always been buried, a version that felt safer helping others than helping myself. My chest tightened when she said that. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream that this wasn't me. But I couldn't lie. Not when a strange heaviness wrapped around me every time I resisted. That was the moment they realized the hypnosis wasn't the whole story. Something inside me had responded to it because part of me already needed something I never admitted. And that realization alone would have broken me, if not for what happened next. Aisha stepped forward, placed a soft hand on my shoulder, and said the words that sealed a new chapter of my life. Not a command. Not a joke. Just a quiet observation. Maybe you became their maid, because a part of you was already waiting for permission to become someone different. Her voice lingered in my mind long after the session ended, and I didn't know whether to fear that possibility or accept it. But the truth was clear. This was only the beginning. Because once a mind is opened, even by accident, it can never fully go back to the shape it had before. The next morning should have felt normal, but it didn't. I woke up with this dull ache behind my eyes, the kind you get after crying even though I hadn't cried at all. My room looked the same, my clothes were the same, nothing around me had changed. But something inside me had shifted just enough that even breathing felt different. I kept repeating to myself that it was just a suggestion, that hypnosis wore off, that this wasn't permanent. But every small movement I made felt too careful, too controlled, as if some invisible pressure held my shoulders. I didn't even realize I was folding my blanket with precise, neat corners until I looked down and froze. I never did that before. My mother walked by my room and smiled, saying she was proud I was finally learning to be tidy. If only she knew that I didn't even consciously choose to do it. There was something about that realization that made my throat tighten. I tried ignoring it the whole day, focusing on school assignments, pretending everything was normal. But my mind kept drifting back to Aisha's words, especially the part about unlocking a hidden version of myself. I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to accept that maybe deep inside, I was yearning for something completely different from who I claimed to be. But the more I ran from the thought, the more it stuck to me like glue. By afternoon, I felt so restless that I ended up messaging the group, asking if we could talk again. They replied instantly. Too instantly. As if they had been waiting. When I reached their apartment again, the atmosphere was different. Last time, everyone joked. This time, everything felt heavier, more serious. Even the way they looked at me had changed. Not judgmental. Not mocking. Just searching. Like they wanted answers just as much as I did. Daniel kept glancing at me with guilt in his eyes, as if he truly regretted being the one who brought that device into our lives. Seema sat quietly, fidgeting with his hands. Rohan offered me water without any jokes attached. Only Aisha maintained her steady calmness, the kind that made me both trust her and fear her understanding. They asked if anything weird had happened since I left yesterday. I didn't know how to explain it properly, but I told them about the blanket, the strange calmness, the automatic movements. They exchanged looks that made my heart drop. Clearly, they already suspected something. Whatever this was, it wasn't fading. It was growing. They asked if they could observe me again, not with commands this time, but with normal interaction, just to see how I responded without any triggers. I agreed because I needed answers, not because I trusted what would happen. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. They talked about random topics while I sat on the couch, trying to act natural. But the moment something fell to the floor, a pen rolling under the table, I moved before anyone else did. Not because I wanted to, but because my body acted on instinct. I picked it up, placed it neatly on the table, and sat back down as if nothing happened. Except it wasn't nothing. Their eyes widened. Mine did too. Aisha scribbled something in her notebook, and I felt a sick twist in my stomach. I wasn't waiting for commands anymore. I was reacting automatically to anything that seemed out of place. That's when I panicked. Really panicked. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to convince myself I still had control over my mind. They tried calming me down, telling me we would figure this out together. But that word together triggered something unexpected, something deeper. I felt a weird warmth in my chest again. Not obedience. Belonging. As if serving them made me part of the group in a way nothing else ever had. I hated that feeling. I hated how comforting it was. Aisha asked me to sit. Not a command. Just a request. But still, my body obeyed instantly. She then asked how I truly felt when I helped them. That question hit harder than anything else. I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to look weak. But something inside me cracked open, and the truth slipped out painfully. I told them I felt useful. Safe. Like I had purpose. Like I wasn't invisible. And that last part, that part one never said out loud before. I wasn't popular, or especially skilled, or confident about who I was. Helping them made me feel needed. And that scared me more than any hypnosis command ever could. Seema asked if I wanted them to reverse the command. I thought my answer would be yes. But my voice didn't come out. Not even a whisper. My silence told them more than I ever could. It wasn't just the hypnosis holding me. It was something deeper tied to my identity, something I had avoided acknowledging for years. Aisha leaned forward and said something that shook me even harder. She said sometimes people are drawn to roles that offer stability, care, and clarity. She said being a helper wasn't weakness, it was just a different kind of strength. Her words were gentle, but they still stung because I felt exposed, as if she was holding a mirror to a part of me I never dared to look at. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Aisha told me she wanted to try something, but only if I agreed. Not hypnosis. Not commands. Just an experiment to understand the emotions inside me better. She asked me to wear something different for a few minutes. Not a costume. Not anything embarrassing. Just an apron. A simple, ordinary, white apron. She said it would help them observe how my mind reacted when I consciously stepped into a role instead of being forced into it. I resisted immediately, shaking my head. Wearing something like that felt like crossing a line, even if it was harmless. But then she asked me gently if I trusted her. And I did. Even in the middle of my fear, I trusted her more than anyone else. I took the apron from her hands, and something in my chest tightened the moment my fingers touched the fabric. It wasn't feminine. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a symbol. A symbol of service, of care, of support. And the moment I tied it around my waist, I felt a tremor run through me. Not from hypnosis. From recognition. As if a part of me whispered finally. The room went silent. My breathing slowed. My posture changed without commands, without triggers, without pressure. It was like wearing that apron unlocked the emotional weight inside me, the part that kept telling me serving others made me feel safe. For a full minute, none of us spoke. I stood there, feeling like a stranger in my own skin but also more myself than before. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands, whispering that he didn't mean for any of this to happen. Rohan looked like he wanted to apologize. Seema stared at the floor. Aisha watched me with soft eyes that almost made me break. She asked me how I felt. The truth rose slowly, painfully, like a confession dragged from deep inside. I told her I felt like my mind had stopped fighting for the first time since the hypnosis. Like the constant inner struggle had quieted down. Like things made sense. Not good sense. Not easy sense. But a kind of clarity I couldn't explain. The emotional relief scared me even more, because it meant the problem wasn't the command, it was me. Then Aisha said something none of us were prepared for. She said the command might have acted like a key, but the door it unlocked was already there. She said maybe my identity had always been more fluid, more gentle, more inclined to support than to lead. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, turning the same thought over and over in my mind until it stopped feeling like a thought and more like a quiet truth settling into my bones. The apron was just fabric, nothing more. But the way it made me feel calm, present, purposeful, terrified me in ways I couldn't describe. It wasn't supposed to feel natural. It wasn't supposed to feel comforting. And yet the moment I untied it last night, I felt like I was peeling off something I wasn't ready to lose. Every breath felt heavier after that. I kept telling myself it was all psychology, all mind tricks, all leftover hypnosis effects. Maybe I was just confused. Maybe stress had made me vulnerable. But the more excuses I created, the more they crumbled. Because deep inside, the truth wasn't leaving me alone. It sat there quietly, waiting for me to accept it. A part of me felt connected to that role, not because they forced me into it but because it gave me structure, a way to express something I never had the courage to show. I avoided their messages all morning. They checked in multiple times, asking if I was okay, asking if they should come over, asking if I needed space. I didn't respond to any of it. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what version of myself they were expecting anymore, or which version I wanted to show. Afternoon sunlight filled my room differently, softer somehow, like the world outside was moving gently around me while I remained frozen in place. Around 4 p.m., there was a knock at my door. Not the quick, impatient kind. Slow. Careful. Like the person on the other side wasn't sure if I would even open it. When I did, Aisha stood there alone. No group. No jokes. No experiments. Just her, holding a small paper bag in her hands. Her expression wasn't firm or confident the way it usually was. It was soft and worried. She asked if she could come in. My mother had gone to visit relatives, so the house was quiet. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the edge of my sofa while I stood awkwardly, unsure what to do or say. She placed the paper bag on the table between us. Then she apologized. Not a casual sorry. A real one. She said she should have been more careful, more aware of the emotional impact the experiment could have on me. She said she never wanted to make me feel trapped or confused. She cared, truly, and hearing her say that made my chest ache in ways I didn't expect. I finally told her what happened after I went home, how everything felt different, how I couldn't stop thinking, how the quiet inside me felt louder than before. I didn't cry, but my voice cracked enough times that she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, listening with more compassion than I thought she had. When I finished explaining, she opened the paper bag and pulled out something folded neatly. My heart skipped when I realized it was the same apron. She said she brought it not to push me into anything but to give me control. She said I should be the one to decide what it meant to me, not them, not a command, not hypnosis. Just me. I didn't touch it. Not at first. I sat across from her, staring at the apron as if it were some kind of mirror showing a reflection I wasn't ready to face. Aisha said something next that hit deeper than anything she'd said before. She said identity isn't always discovered through confidence or freedom, sometimes it's discovered through responsibility, caring for others, holding things together, finding strength in roles people overlook. She said maybe what I felt wasn't weakness. Maybe it was a part of me that had always existed quietly, waiting for a moment of honesty to surface. Those words shattered something in me. All my life, I tried to be someone I wasn't. Tougher than I felt. Louder than my nature. More detached than my heart allowed. I always helped people in quiet ways, cleaning up after gatherings, fixing things silently, stepping in when others felt overwhelmed. I never admitted it, but that was when I felt the most like myself. Nobody saw that side. Nobody valued it. And because nobody valued it, I pretended it didn't matter. But the hypnosis pulled the mask off. It didn't create something new. It revealed something I never wanted to face. Aisha asked if I wanted her help. Not as a leader. Not as the one in control. But as a friend who wanted me to understand myself without fear. For the first time in days, I nodded without hesitation. She smiled gently, the kind of smile that doesn't judge or push. She asked if we could try something small, something simple, something honest. She asked me to wear the apron again, not to serve anyone, not to follow orders, but just to stand in it and pay attention to how I felt without pressure. I hesitated, but then I reached for it slowly, my fingers brushing the fabric like it might shock me. I tied it around myself with shaking hands. And the moment I did, everything inside me went still. Not controlled. Not hypnotized. Just aligned. Like puzzle pieces that had been scattered suddenly fit together. My breathing softened, my shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in years, my thoughts weren't fighting each other. It scared me how natural it felt, but the fear didn't come from the apron, it came from accepting that maybe this version of me wasn't wrong. Aisha watched me closely, asking quietly how I felt. I told her the truth, it felt like I was finally allowed to be soft without apologizing for it. She stood up and adjusted the strap slightly, not in a controlling way but gently, like helping someone put on something important. She said identity wasn't only about appearance, it was about intention. What did the role mean to me? What emotions did it express? What part of me was trying to speak through it? I didn't have answers yet. But I wanted to find them. Aisha suggested we go back to the apartment, not for experiments this time, but for closure, clarity, and understanding. She said the others were worried and wanted to make sure I was okay. I agreed because running from them didn't fix anything. When we walked into the apartment together, they all stood up instantly. The moment they saw the apron on me, their expressions changed. Not in judgment. Not in shock. In recognition. Like they finally understood the weight of everything that had happened. Daniel apologized first. A long, sincere apology where his voice shook slightly. He said he brought the hypnosis device as a joke, never thinking it would actually work, never imagining it would unlock something personal. Seymour admitted he felt guilty since the moment he saw me pick up the pen without thinking. Rohan said he should have stopped the whole thing the second he saw I looked overwhelmed. For the first time, all of them looked at me with genuine remorse, not curiosity. I told them I wasn't upset anymore. What scared me wasn't them, it was what I saw in myself. The part that responded. The part that didn't want the role to fade. The silence in the room after that was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was honest. Aisha stepped beside me and told them the new plan. No commands. No triggers. No hypnosis. They would simply ask me questions, help me explore the feelings, understand the identity piece step by step. She wanted them to support me, not experiment on me. And surprisingly, they all agreed immediately. The next hour was a whirlwind of emotions. They asked me how I felt when I helped people, when I cleaned up, when I supported others quietly. They asked why I never showed that part of myself publicly. They asked when I first felt confused. The more I answered, the more emotional I became, because every explanation revealed pieces of a puzzle I never knew I was putting together. I realized I always hid the gentle side of myself because I thought nobody valued it. Because I thought being soft made me weak. Because I thought caring too much made me easy to overlook. But now they were listening. Truly listening. And being heard made my chest feel warm in ways I couldn't deny. When the hour ended, Aisha said something that changed the direction of everything. She said perhaps the role wasn't about servitude at all. Maybe it was about expression, showing the part of me that communicates through care, through presence, through responsibility. Maybe wearing the apron wasn't about being someone's maid. Maybe it was about embracing the part of me that felt calm, centered, and true. She then asked the question that made my breath catch. Did I want to explore this identity further? The room held its breath along with me. My hands trembled slightly against the fabric of the apron. The truth rose slowly, painfully, but clearly. And I whispered yes. The moment that yes slipped out of my mouth, everything in the apartment shifted. Not physically, not with sound or movement, but emotionally. It felt like the air itself recognized what I had just admitted. Seymour exhaled in relief. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, unsure but supportive. Rohan nodded slowly, processing everything. And Aisha, she didn't smile, she didn't rush, she didn't celebrate. She just placed a gentle hand on my arm and said she was proud of me for choosing honesty over fear. Something about her saying that made my throat tighten because it was the first time in a long time someone had acknowledged the courage behind my confusion. She told me that exploration wasn't transformation. It wasn't a switch. It wasn't a destination I needed to reach. It was simply a path, one I could step off anytime if it didn't feel right. Her voice was steady and warm, grounding me in a way I desperately needed. She asked if I was ready to take the first real step now, not forced, not guided by hypnosis, but consciously. I nodded again, slower this time, with intention instead of panic. She invited me to another room so we could talk privately. The moment we stepped inside, she closed the door gently and asked how deeply I wanted to explore this identity. I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't thinking in terms of labels or roles. I wasn't imagining dramatic changes. I just knew that wearing the apron made me feel something I had buried for years. I wanted to understand that feeling instead of running from it. Aisha sat cross-legged on the floor and motioned for me to sit too. I lowered myself, feeling strangely light, as if admitting the truth had loosened a knot in my chest I never knew existed. She asked me to describe in detail what I felt when I wore the apron earlier. Not the actions I performed, but the emotions. I closed my eyes and tried to find the words. Calm. Purpose. Belonging. A soft kind of strength, the kind that comes from supporting instead of leading. A quiet confidence that didn't yell or demand attention. These were the words that came to me, and when I said them out loud, Aisha nodded as if they confirmed something she suspected. She asked what scared me the most. I said the fear of becoming someone I didn't recognize. She shook her head gently and told me that sometimes we grow into ourselves, not away from ourselves. Maybe the version I feared wasn't a stranger, it was the real me finally stepping forward. Hearing that felt like an anchor dropping in my heart. Then she opened a small closet and pulled out a neatly folded outfit. Not a costume, not anything exaggerated or theatrical. Just soft, simple, clean clothing, light fabric, gentle colors. Something restful. Something that symbolized care and presence rather than servitude. She said it wasn't about dressing differently, it was about giving myself permission to express the parts of me I had ignored. I hesitated again. The apron was one thing, but this felt like a deeper step. A conscious step. She saw the fear in my eyes and didn't push. She sat back down beside me and said I didn't have to wear it unless I felt it was right. She told me to breathe, to think, to listen to myself instead of the panic in my head. I held the fabric in my hands for a long moment. It felt soft. Safe. I thought about how long I had been pretending in my life, always playing the role others expected, never the role that felt natural. This wasn't about being someone else. This was about letting myself be gentle, letting myself be cared for, letting myself exist without judgment. So finally, with trembling hands, I changed. Not fully, not dramatically, just enough to feel different. Enough to acknowledge the softness I had denied for so long. When I stepped out of the room, the others saw me. They didn't laugh. They didn't tease. They didn't even stare too long. Seema gave me a small nod of encouragement. Rohan smiled in a way that said I looked comfortable. Daniel still looked shocked, but not in a bad way, more like he was realizing I had layers none of them ever bothered to notice. And for the first time, I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt seen. Aisha asked how I felt. And the truth rose gently this time, not like a confession but like an acceptance. I felt peaceful. I felt lighter. I felt like I wasn't forcing myself into a box that didn't fit anymore. The world didn't collapse. Nothing dramatic happened. I just felt right. From that day on, things didn't suddenly become easy, but they became clearer. We met more often, not for experiments but for discussions. They asked questions that made me think deeply about identity, what it means, what it shapes, what it reveals. They helped me figure out what emotions were tied to the role of support and care. I started noticing small things in my daily life that aligned with that identity. How I automatically tidied spaces without thinking. How I listened to people more closely than I spoke. How I felt fulfilled when I brought comfort or calm into a room. None of this was about commands anymore. None of it came from hypnosis. The effects had long worn off. What remained was me, stripped of pretense. Weeks passed. Aisha helped me build confidence in understanding myself without guilt. She reminded me constantly that identity wasn't a performance, it was a home you slowly built for your truth. With every conversation, every moment of reflection, I became less afraid of the softness inside me. One day, during one of our sessions, Aisha asked me a question that brought the entire journey into focus. She asked if I thought the command created the identity, or if it simply exposed what I had buried. The answer hit me instantly. I said the command didn't make me someone new, it just broke the lock on a door I kept shut because I didn't want anyone to see what was behind it. She smiled and said that was the bravest truth I had spoken yet. As time passed, supporting others became something I embraced rather than hid. I helped my mother more around the house, not out of obligation but out of genuine care. I cleaned with intention. I organized spaces because it brought me peace. I became softer in my interactions, kinder in my responses, more honest with myself. And surprisingly, people around me responded positively. My friends noticed I was less withdrawn. My family noticed I carried a calmness I never had before. Aisha suggested I volunteer at a local community center to get used to expressing this part of myself publicly. The idea terrified me, but she promised she would come with me on the first day. And true to her word, she did. I found comfort in helping elderly visitors find their seats, organizing supplies, cleaning up after events. Nobody questioned my intentions. Nobody judged me. They appreciated me. They thanked me. And for the first time, I realized that embracing my gentle nature didn't make me weak. It made me valuable. Weeks turned into months. My identity didn't transform overnight. It unfolded. Slowly. Patiently. Honestly. And my friends supported every step. The apron became a symbol, not of servitude but of acceptance, of authenticity, of courage. I kept it with me not to wear for others, but to remind myself how far I had come from that first moment of fear. One evening, as we gathered at their apartment like we used to, Aisha stood beside me, watching me organize a cluttered table without being asked. She said something quietly, almost like a thought slipping out. She said, "You're not our maid. You're someone who found strength in care. And that's more powerful than any command ever could be." I looked at her, realizing how true her words were. I wasn't bound by hypnosis anymore. I wasn't following anyone's orders. I was simply being myself, gentle, supportive, calm, and unafraid to express it. That night, as I walked home under the streetlights, apron folded neatly in my bag, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt whole. Not because of a command. Not because of an identity someone forced on me. But because I finally listened to the quiet voice inside me that had been waiting for years to be heard. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, I understood the truth completely. One hypnosis command didn't make me their maid. It helped me become myself.